Chippewa, Korea, 1950. North Korea invaded South Korea. The North Koreans were being supported by the Russians. The United Nations got together and decided to stop communism from advancing. The North Koreans chased the South all the way down to Busan. For several months there was a perimeter down there, and then the United Nations chased the North Koreans all the way up to the Yalu River in the north. The Chinese come on board. They chase us back down approximately to the 38th parallel, where the demarcation line has sat for about 70 years. By 1952, there was a static line running across the entire country of Korea. The Chinese were in the north and the United Nations were in the south. EOD was one of the small businesses that took place in South Korea when people found something that was disagreeable to them that might explode, so they would give the people at EOD a job to get rid of it for them. This is what an explosive ordnance disposal unit looks like in combat in Korea in 1952. We have two tents. We've got a living tent and we've got a working tent. We've got three vehicles. We got a Jeep, we got a 3/4 ton truck, and we've got a bomb service truck. This is the EOD detachment. There are 9 GIs, a couple of Koreans, a couple of corporals, a couple of sergeants, 1 CO. We also have 3 Koreans that work for us. We need a guard. We have a guard around the compound. We have a couple of other people that are just general helpers. Most of the time, we just wait for the phone to ring. We have a single line, single phone coming in, and most of our information comes by phone. When we get a call, somebody says, "We've got something. It looks like a pipe sticking up out of the road." So they asked for help when they decided it wasn't a pipe. And we decided that we'd get in a Jeep, run up, find out what it was these people had. And it turned out to be a Russian 122 millimeter mortar. Now that baby's not something you want to move around and play with too much. So one of the EOD men is going to set up a little charge on the bulb, which is down in the ground there. And with all probability, is going to put a little charge on it, set a time fuse, and calmly walk away to cover. 2 or 3 minutes later, there's going to be a big bang. And the mortar will be no more. We come back and take a look at it, make sure everything's okay, and the job's been complete. Here's a similar incident where simply somebody calls in. They say, "We've got a dud round. It's stuck in a bunker somewhere." Guys living in the bunker don't particularly want a dud Russian 76, so they asked EOD to come up and take a look at it. Well, getting up to where these people are sometimes can be a real job. because we are living a couple of miles behind where this particular item landed. We have to find our way to an outpost and then get out to the outpost and then decide that, okay, we can take this thing out. And a lot of times you want to destroy duds and things like that where they happen to be. But in somebody's bunker, they don't particularly want a 76 to be put off, particularly inside the bunker. So we defuse it and we'll pick it up, carry it back down, and take it back to our cemetery and not bury it, but lay it there to be eventually blown up in our demolition area. Okay. Here's some pretty big stuff. This is a Russian 122 millimeter gun round. That's not as easy to carry around. In fact, that thing is heavy enough, it means one person will have an awfully hard time carrying it very far. So generally, if you've got big stuff like that, we'll have our 3/4 ton truck with us, and we'll take it in, pack it so it doesn't ride around in the truck, and take it back to the cemetery to be buried. Then we really get into something that is a great deal more difficult to do. Somebody calls up and says that a 4.2-inch mortar round has been destroyed by an incoming round of Chinese artillery. And we bring up everything we've got, all three of the vehicles, and we have got a really job to study on and do, because there's all kinds of stuff is going to be scattered around here. Pounds and pounds, if not tons and tons, of U.S. ammunition laying around in various states of disrepair. We see a case of probably a 4.2-inch mortar ammunition laying in the foreground. We're going to find partially destroyed 4.2 mortar rounds. So it's a job of we really just have to be very careful. We have to go about our job slowly, and we have to cart this stuff off to some place where we can safely detonate it. Again, another view. This is the 2.5-ton bomb service truck that we're using to pull. This stuff is burned. We don't know what in the heck may be in there. And we've got to clean up this mortar position the same way. Just carefully removing and carting away to where we will be able to stack it and destroy it. Good indication of stuff, various shells being put into a truck. And we're going to take it, we're going to find a place to destroy it. We found a good place here. It's in a depression in the ground, it's almost a crater. And we're using some cratering charges and are trying to make a blast that will blow the stuff into the ground rather than scattering it around. So you kind of put a blanket of high explosives on top and you set it off, hopefully, so that it blows the whole bunch at one time. Okay? An interesting occurrence here. Some of our South Korean friends were driving a 2.5-ton truck. Well, they had ammunition in the truck. They also had a number of civilians. Somebody set off the whole darn truck and scattered ammunition around a quarter mile. It also scattered all the people that were on the truck. And it did a wonderful job in destroying the vehicle. We got a call. We go out. It's a hot summer's day. We've got hunks of people hanging in trees. We've got scattered ammunition of every variety possible, scattered around on the ground. We don't give a darn about that truck. Somebody else can come and get that if they want it. But we have got to figure a way to pick up, to move, and get this material to where we can safely blow it in a one big bang. That's another good job we have to do. And that's the reason the Army pays us to do our job. The easiest way is to simply set a little bit of composition C3 in the nose of something, set a time fuse on it, initiate the time fuse, and slowly walk away to a safe position until it goes bang. This is a larger destruction that we have. This is rather interesting. These are Chinese grenades, the little things in the background, all Chinese grenades. There's some mortar rounds in the front there. We initiated one of the Chinese grenades just for interest and discovered there was a American newspaper was wrapped around the detonator inside the Chinese kind of potato masher grenade. Found out when that paper was printed in Chicago, less than a year before, it had found its way to a Chinese grenade and to be thrown, or not thrown in this case, but to be picked up by American GIs in Korea in 1952. Just another way of keeping a piece of ammunition safe. It looked like it might have been opened up, and so we decided we'd make a slurry of mud, and we were sliding shells into the slurry of mud to keep anything from going bang bang when we didn't want it to happen. And again, another blast that we're going to attempt to do. I can see some grenades in the foreground and just junk in the background. And the thing we have to attempt to be able to do is to put enough explosive on top of this stuff to make sure that it blows into the ground and not being scattered around. And that takes a little bit of thinking about how to do it. Here's another good example of an incoming dud that simply going to get rid of it exactly where it is. We put a little bit of it, looks like a hunk of C3 on the front of it, and we're getting ready to pop it off in a couple of minutes. And here's a much larger detonation that's neither practical to try and cart away, and it's certainly not necessary to handle any more than we have to. These rounds are going to be stacked up, and we will destroy them exactly where they are. Now the surgeon has found a 500-pound bomb. It was a dud. It's rusted. It's been there for some time. But somebody just happened to call up and say, I've got a bomb. And so with that, we're going to need more than a Jeep. We thought the possibility of, because you don't want to be detonating big stuff like this just casually out on the open, because it throws stuff all around. So the sergeant's getting ready to remove the fuse there, and as we did with the smaller rounds of incoming stuff, probably put some C3 in the fuse well, and setting off a big piece of explosive like this, you don't just lay a block up on top of it and make it go bang, because the chances are it may just blow itself apart and you'll have a job to work on, and you'll have 2 half bombs instead of 1 whole bomb. This is rather interesting. This is a 500-pounder. And that particular bomb, the guy was building a road. He bumps on a rock. It wasn't a rock. It was a 500-pound bomb. And he gives a call, tells us he's got a bomb. So we figured it was going to be a real difficult job to do. We couldn't get our bomb service truck anywhere near where he still was building his road. We couldn't get close to it. So we used his road scraper, and here's one of the GIs in our group that is using his road scraper to handle the bomb. Now, you have to, a lot of times in this business, do a little bit of improvising. In fact, it's a lot improvising. And attempting to make darn sure that you don't do something really wrong. We usually have 2 or 3 people on a job. We talk among ourselves, decide what is the right thing to do, and decide to do it. Seemed perfectly okay to pull the fuse out of that thing, and seemed perfectly okay when we got the fuse out to use his road grading equipment to deliver to our bomb service truck. So that is exactly what we did. Another day in the job of EOD. Here's another way that this, I believe, is our 3/4 ton truck. It's been defused, 500-pounder, and we're just using the chain and the winch to pull it up into the bed of the truck, where we'll stabilize it so it's going to go rolling around, or maybe worse yet, just bounce out the back of the truck and we'd have to worry about getting it back in again. And we go merrily on our way driving down the road. Now, if you don't have your Jeep, you don't have your 3/4 ton, and you don't have a 2.5 ton, and you want to move a bomb, somehow you figure a way to get that bomb, probably with an awful lot of help, up into the front end of your Jeep, where it's not supposed to go. It's going to flatten the tires on the Jeep. But you manage to do something that you have to do. This is the holding area for our unit. We bring stuff here that we want to hold for a certain reason, for intelligence purposes, for later demolition, but we don't want people in there except the EOD people. Now we know of one individual who just kind of wandered up one day, and we observed from a distance that he was sitting on one of the couple of bombs in the foreground here, smoking a cigarette. Kind of went down, talked to the gentleman, asked him if he knew where he was. He said, no, just stopping for a few minutes, going back to my unit. Well, we told him he was sitting on a bomb. Well, the guy decided he would leave very quickly, which he did do. Interesting item right here. Told you a little earlier, the artillery was fairly safe to handle once it had been hit by incoming fire. Here's a 57 millimeter U.S. artillery round that received an incoming piece of shrapnel. You can see that in the green part on the top of the shell. So we brought that in because we thought that was rather interesting, that a piece was hit by incoming round and did not explode the round. We have very safe ammunition to handle. The Russians and the Chinese don't care about their people nearly as much as we do. So it's not really a good idea to drop a carton of Russian mortar rounds, because somebody did that. It earned itself when it hit the ground. When they picked up the next round, the whole thing went off. Not a good idea with handling foreign ammunition. This is a Japanese 75, packed in its case, just something we came across. Thought it would be interesting to bring it in and show how the Japanese packed their ammunition. Japan controlled Korea before the Second World War and until the end of it. In this particular box, you can see the little fuse down at the bottom left-hand side. It's a little orange with a silver tip to it. And then I think this is a 75. The 75 round is in the top, and the cartridge, the powder is in the bottom there. This is an easily transportable, probably for a Jap 75 millimeter gun. Just another day in the job of EOD. These are our inerted rounds of various Russian ammunition. From 52 millimeter mortar rounds on the left, 122 millimeter round bulb-shaped unit third from the left, the 152 millimeter gun round, and on down the line, all kinds of various Russian ammunition that was being supplied to the North Koreans and Chinese. Burning smokeless powder. When there's a firefight up on the line, there's a lot of extra smokeless powder that is not burned. The 155s may not use, when shooting short distance, all of the amount of smokeless powder that is given to each round. When they don't need it up on the line to fire, then it is sent back to the ammunition supply point. They don't want it, so we get the job of picking up the excess smokeless powder for delivering artillery rounds, and we bring them back to our demolition area. This is a 20-ton beginning of the burn of 20 tons of smokeless ammunition. We generally would pile it up in a big pile, which has been done. Then we will make a secondary small pile running out perhaps 30 or 40 feet, and we would light one end of it. And we would drive away, and this would happen. It begins when the small trail of fire gets to the big burn. It begins to burn like this, and this, and that is what is really, and finally it just almost gets into a high order detonation. And that is an entire Korean valley with probably flame going up several hundred feet. That's a total estimate. Several hundred feet, maybe 1,000 feet in the air. Now, one time we made a little bit of an error. We thought it'd be interesting to see what would happen at night. Incidentally, this is not a picture at night. This is in broad daylight. We thought it might be interesting to see what it was like to set off a 20-ton burn of smokeless powder after dark. Well, we found out. We kind of think it set off a big light over the entire peninsula of Korea, because we had MPs on our tails wanting to know just what the hell had happened. We had a very difficult telling that we were so busy we couldn't get all our work done in one day. Well, the brass accepted it. They knew we were lying, and we knew we were lying. We never tried that again. This is an indication of brass. That's the brass that is used in the smokeless powder, with the smokeless powder, being delivered to the artillery positions. We get the smokeless powder, but for every one of those hunks of brass, there was a shell that was delivered to somebody, hopefully in the north. Now these are shell cases, will come back and be sent back to Japan to be resized and rearmed and sent back to be used again. Just gives some idea of what happens when the artillery is firing a heck of a lot of rounds. Okay, aircraft crashes. A lot of aircraft was used kind of like artillery. They'd arm a F-84 with a couple of 500-pounders, maybe 2 under each wing, and they would go in and when they do decide to go in, somebody would shoot them down. They didn't make it every time. This guy came back, fortunately got back over into South, jumped out of his plane and let it go, and we had to clear something from it. We'll say ammunition that was in on that. Rather interesting morning's work here. There was a indication that a plane had been shot down and it crashed and burned on the side of a mountain. By the time we found out how to get to where this was, managed to navigate there, it was the next day. We had also gotten an indication that this particular plane had been armed with long delay fuses. There was a 1,000-pound bomb on it and a 250-pound bomb on it. We arrived the next morning. We're trying to figure out, since we couldn't drive across the rice paddy in the background to where we would then have to climb up to the plane, we were just thinking about how the heck do we get to this darn thing when there was a big bang. A 1,000-pound bomb and a 250-pound bomb go off at the same time. And it may not be possible to go under a Jeep, but we found a way to get about as far under as we could possibly be. This is what it looked after, maybe a minute or so. And there was nothing, I assure you, that was left to that airplane. And we did not have to worry about trying to disassemble a bomb that did not want to be disassembled. Neither did we have to worry about it going off, because it had already gone off. I'm just kind of glad we were slow walkers. Hadn't already crossed that rice paddy. Here's an F-84 that got shot down. He did a darn good job of landing. A couple of his bombs slid off, tore off, and slid across the rice paddy. Well, we got our bomb service truck in the background there, but you don't drive a bomb service truck across a rice paddy. So, how do you get a bomb out of a rice paddy? You get down and dirty, and you pull the darn thing by manpower after making sure that the fuse has been removed. You move it across the rice paddy by manpower until you can get it close enough to your bomb service truck to get one of the winches on it. And then you run it up into the back of your truck and cart it off to the cemetery. There's a bomb in the middle of the road. Anybody can tell it's a bomb in the middle of the road. Quite a few people saw it. The road is the main supply route to a divisional front. It happens also to be in the middle of a major ammunition dump. It's a 1,000-pounder. It also has the indication that it has the long delay fuse on it. Now that does make for a very interesting day's work. First, you got to find it. it's gone far down in that hole. Secondly, you've got to figure a way to defuse it, and it does not wish to be diffused. And if you're successful to this point, you have to get your bomb service truck up to it and drag it out of the hole. So what do you do when you've got something that's supposedly ticking? It wasn't ticking, but it was working a different way. Supposedly ticking. People are very unhappy with not being able to use their road. The people that own the ammunition dump are very unhappy about a 1,000-pound bomb that might decide to go boom boom. And we're a few little GIs that are trying to figure out a way to quickly find this thing and quickly get it out of other people's way. So you start really here, digging down in the hole until you locate the thing and successfully getting the bomb service truck up to it. We discover that it does not have the long delay fuses on it. Simple contact fuses, which immeasurably makes us happy, for we can remove the fuses and simply treat it like any other bomb with no fuses on it. And we pull it out of the hole. And that's 1,000 pounds that we're trying to pull at right angles. And it takes quite a little while to get it out of there. Until finally, the sergeant has, well, let us say, has conquered the enemy. And he's showing his pleasure at having done a good job, until we can give it back to the Air Force, who very nicely will take it and decide to drop it again.